I've owned this Leica M11 for 3 years now, and in that time, I dropped my first impressions. I talked about this relative to the previous solution I used to use. I shared a review on this camera. I talked about this camera and my favorite lenses. I dropped a second review on this camera. I even talked about how I use this for the work that I do. I talked about this camera relative to its peers in the same lineup, the monochrome and the P. I even dropped a third review. Well, we're not going to start the year with another review. In fact, I won't be doing any more reviews, but we'll save that for another video. In this video, I want to share 3 images with you. 3 images that explain why the Leica M11, 100 years removed from the first Leica camera ever made, continues to be my favorite photography tool to date. It's been a dream of mine to visit Calcutta. The color, the texture, the light in this city, it just stands out in a way that many cities don't. And when I finally got to go and visit, I didn't expect to capture so many images of people getting haircuts and beard trims in the streets. The color, the layers, the story, there's so many things happening in this image that feel like social realism to me. And that's something that occupies a lot of the photography that I capture across India. This subject is something that permeates a lot of the documentary work that I capture. It's about the conditions of the working class, often in, poorer environments, and challenging and questioning the system in which they exist. You could argue that this image, it could have been captured with anything, but for me, it was only possible with the Leica M11. Like many major cities across India, things get very busy in the mornings across Calcutta. And it's also a place that, with that morning light, you want to get out and you want to capture. But as you navigate certain places, it starts to get really claustrophobic. There are waves and waves of people just trying to get to their destination, and you're not trying to slow them down. You do not want to get in an environment where you are obstructing someone from their way of life. And it's in environments like this, when it starts to get tighter, that a camera like the M11 shines. This thing is incredibly nimble and easy to use. And being able to zone focus, to range focus, I should say, and pre-focus to an image is an invaluable feature for the work that I do. It allows me to kind of navigate these tighter spaces and often think about my composition well before I'm actually going to take the photo. And it does it in a way where a lot of other cameras can't. When I caught this barbershop scene happening, just in the street, I knew I had to get a photo. I was using a 28mm Summicron lens, so I knew I had something wide enough to capture the scene. So when I saw it, I set my aperture to f5.6. I made sure that I was gonna meter for the center of the frame because that was what was gonna be darkest. And I pre-focused to about 4 feet in front of me. And once I had that set, I knew that I had to just jump in, grab the photo, and then get out. I waited and waited for the crowd to kind of pass by, so I knew that the mirror, it wasn't just gonna show a swath of humans, that I can even inject myself into this photo. That was the kind of photo that I want to capture with this scene. So when I saw my opportunity, I jumped in, composed through the viewfinder because you have this zero latency view of the world. You can just see what's happening in front of you, composed my shot a few frames, and then got out. This process of being able to sort of pre-visualize a scene, jump in, grab the frames you're looking for, and jump out is what makes this camera so special to me. It's great that it has this fantastic sensor with a ton of dynamic range, but it's because it's in this body where it's incredibly nimble. That is what makes a camera like the M11 shine. Pairing the image quality with a body like this is what makes the M11 an incredible creative tool. And this image underscores that point for me. Let's stay in Kolkata for a little bit longer. If you get out early enough, there are a ton of people that are sort of preparing to tackle the day. And there's all kinds of tradespeople and workers that are doing things that are unique to their job. And there's one scene that I never get tired of. When you own a lorry in India, these big trucks that are used for moving things, it is a point of pride. You can tell by the paint and the decorations and how they're treated, which is why you'll see many people at the top of the day washing their vehicles in the streets. It just happens everywhere. And especially around sunrise, when you can get the light beaming across the streets, It's a very special moment to witness. In this photo, you see these soap suds all over the windshield, and it just starts to change what you see. You start to see objects, forms, and even a face that changes the language of the image. And when you pair this with some of the religious iconography that's inside the vehicle, well, there's a story here, and I'll leave you to explore that. I really, really appreciate this photo. It is a special one to me. And the moment, well, it was me sort of seeing this person, smiling and interacting through body language, and then taking this 21mm Summilux lens, getting inside of the vehicle, and then framing the scene to what you see here. While I had my M11 with me, this image, it was shot with the M11 monochrome, and I wanted to test out a new lens during this trip. I wanted to try something different, a different perspective. And this led me to the 21mm Summilux lens, something that I've never used before. I never shot this wide before for the documentary photography that I do, and I was just blown away. This is something that captures a very wide scene, as you would expect, but does in a way where aberrations and color shifting, all these things are mitigated in a solution that is quite small. When you own a Leica M11, you're taking all these efficiencies, all these technological achievements that Leica has introduced. You know, when you think about image quality processor, sensor, as well as battery efficiency, and even navigation, the UI. You take all of these things, and yet you still have access to this rich history of M glass, and you can discover things that just delight you in what they can do. That makes this thing worth it for the work that I'm doing. And what's astonishing to me is that while I have my favorite suite of lenses, 3 years removed from when this camera was available, I'm still just scratching the surface at the stories I can tell with respect to the glass. If you're a member of the Church Street Foto Club, you probably know this already, but 2020 was the year that I knew what I wanted to do with my life, with respect to the creative journey. 2022 was when I really started doing it. And there's one photo that captures this moment. I know for many of you watching, this is just another portrait. For me, it's so much more. When I got to visit Chennai, I had this opportunity to stop by this welfare school and take a portrait of all the kids that were there and the teachers and the staff. And this was one of the photos that I got to capture. And it is a moment that continues to really encapsulate a lot of what my journey is about. Right now, this is the only photo that's actually hanging in my office. And when I reminisce about it, I think about capturing it. I think about the day and how we had to prepare for it. I think about me and my assistant setting up the backdrop and moving the bench around, the table around. I remember interacting with the kids, the teacher. Inevitably, if I think long enough, I get to the experience of taking the photos, and I think about the experience of using, the tools in front of me to capture this image. And that is what qualifies this camera as my favorite and will probably disqualify it for many other people. It is the experience of using the Leica M11. When you hold this camera, it gives you this undeniable feeling of quality. It feels intentional. It feels like a tool that was manufactured to take a photograph. And I know how silly that sounds to some of you watching, but there is such a difference in how this is put together compared to so many other solutions on the market. And for many people, that won't mean anything, and that's totally fine. There are different solutions for different jobs and for different needs of creative individuals. For someone like myself, and I'm only going to speak about myself, this delivers an experience that caters to my creative journey. This is something that feels like it can take a tumble and still keep going. And I know this because it's already happened. It doesn't feel like a toy. It doesn't feel like cheap plastic. And again, that might not be something that is a requirement for many other people, but for me, it is something that I deeply appreciate. I've said this before and I'll say it again. The best feature a camera can have is that it makes you want to pick it up and use it. And no camera gives me that feeling more than the Leica M11. I've owned this camera for over 3 years and poetically traveled over 300,000 kilometers with it. I take it with me everywhere. And it is something that I take with me even when the job doesn't require it. And last year, this wasn't even my most used camera. I'll get to that in another video, but it is still something that brings me the most joy. And I think that is really what this entire video is about, is that trying to find that one camera that sparks the most joy out of you to continue using it, to continue taking images, producing images, and sharing your story. Whether it's brand new or several years old, find the tool that sparks your creativity. And I want to believe that's going to set you on the right path. With all of this said, this actually is a perfect time to pass the dialogue back to you. If you've made it this far, I want to know, what is that camera for you? What is the tool that makes you want to go out and create and document the world around you? Is it something that you've owned for several years? Is it something that you picked up recently? Or maybe it's something that you're going to pick up that you believe is going to spark that creativity. Let's continue this conversation as we always do in the comments down below. Last year was an interesting year. I actually had to take a step back. I ended up sharing a lot less than what I had originally planned. And that is because, well, the other work, it's scaled up. The productions we were on, the places we were going, the documentaries we started working on. There's a lot that I have to share with you. There's a lot that I'm excited to share with you. This year feels different. This year feels like we're going to share a lot more, and I am excited to share that journey with you. So for those of you that have been watching for a while, for those of you that are just tuning in and you made it this far, thank you so much. As always, my name's Gadgen. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.